Alright, so decimals are represented in different ways, but first we're going to shift how we think about some things that you've already learned. So the first way that decimals are represented sometimes are by base 10 blocks, or they like to call them decimal grids. So this right here, y'all might know previously as a 100th block. Well, now it represents one whole. So when you see a square like this all the way filled in, it represents one whole. Okay, one whole square. So if this only represents one whole, that means that this little rod right here represents 1/10, because we know that we need 10 of these rods to make up one whole, right? This right here is 1/10. That means that this little guy right here is 1/100th, because as you can see, we need 100 of these guys to make one whole. So this square, this full block, represents one whole. But another way to represent one whole would just be a dollar bill. It is one whole dollar, right? You write it like this: 1 or $1.00. Either way, it represents one whole. You have a full dollar. So we've made that comparison. One whole can be represented either as a full block or as a dollar bill. But how would we represent this? How would we represent 1/10 as money? We know that in the base 10 blocks, we would use a 10 rod because you need 10 of them to fill in the 100 square, right? But what do we need 10 of in money form to equal $1? Well, what about a dime? You need 10 of those to make one whole dollar because each one's worth 10 cents. So you need 10 dimes to make one whole dollar, just like you need 10 of these rods to make one whole square, right? So you have, if you just have one dime, then you only have 1/10 of a dollar because you need 10 of them to make a dollar. So if you only have one of them, you only have 1/10, making this about the same as this. And you would write it just like this: $0.10. Now, we have a 1 right here in the tenths spot, right? We have a 1 in the tenths spot because you need 10 of them to make one whole. So I need 10 tenths to make one whole. That's why whenever I only have one dime, I have a 1 in my tenth spot because I only have 1/10 needed to make my whole. I only had one of the 10 pieces I need, I guess, to make a whole. We decided that this block right here represents one whole, or a dollar bill represents one whole, and you can write them either this way: $1 or $1.00. We also decided that the tenths spot right here, the first place after the decimal, the 10th spot can be represented by a dime because it takes 10 dimes to make $1, just like it takes 10 tenths to make one whole, just like it takes 10 of these rods right here to make one whole block. So the 10th spot can be represented by 1/10. It can be represented by this rod, or it can be represented as a dime. So what about 100th? We know that 100th can be represented as a fraction like this: 1 over 100, meaning 1 out of 100 pieces. It could also be represented by just one tiny box, because you need one tiny box to make up all of this box right here. But what about money form? What is equal to 100th as far as money goes? Well, what about a penny? It takes 100 pennies to equal $1. So 1 penny would equal 1/100th of a dollar because it takes 100 of them to make $1. And just like all the other place values, 10 pennies is equal to 1 dime because 10 pennies is equal to 10 cents. So it takes 10 hundredths to make 1 tenth. And it takes 10 tenths to make 1 whole. So it takes 10 pennies to make 1 dime, and it takes 10 dimes to make $1. Just like it takes 10 hundredths to make 1 tenth, and it takes 10 tenths to make 1 whole. So there you have it. You have hundredths are like pennies, tenths are like dimes, and dollar bills are whole numbers.